Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is the second part of a series I'm making about tree pruning. In the first part, I'll put a link up there for those who haven't seen it yet. We saw there are many good reasons to prune these trees. Today, we'll focus on the practical side. And normally, by the end of this video, you should be able to start pruning a little bit. In the first part, we'll look at the basic functioning of all trees, how trees grow. And we can use this basic understanding to avoid making mistakes when we start pruning these trees. Next, we'll cover key information about tools used for pruning these trees. We'll review timing, different pruning periods, and identify when pruning is appropriate and when it's not. You'll see that regardless of the pruning or shape you choose, there are still a few things to do. There are a few small rules to remember to avoid big mistakes. Let's start the video. First, we'll cover the two main things you should know in my opinion. Namely, understanding how the tree grows its different cycles of vegetation, fruiting and so on, and understanding how it repairs and heals itself. And by knowing that, we'll be able to cultivate our trees according to what we want them to produce. That's something you'll often hear if you go to pruning workshops. You'll hear the people who prune trees say that. You need to understand and listen to the tree. By the way, I really like a quote from Alain Pontoppidan. He says you must listen to the tree constantly, interrupting with pruning shears, or you'll never know the story's end. The tree grows in various ways and we can gauge its vigor by its growth patterns. You must know the tree's current state to determine how to prune it and understand its reaction to pruning. There are different types of buds here. We'll focus on wood buds, vegetative buds that produce leaves and branches, and flower buds. That will be more related to fruiting or flowering. We'll see that in another video. Most branches then have buds. Young branches have wood buds, and it's the terminal bud that will produce a branch and often a few lateral buds that will produce branches. The tree will develop this way. Each bud is a branch in development with the entire branch already inside the bud before it grows in spring. This branch will develop until just before summer in general, and during the summer the branch will become woody, it will turn a little brown, and it will store reserves protecting itself. The fact that it turns a little brown and forms bark to protect itself for the winter, then winter will come and the cycles will repeat every year. So you'll need to know how to spot what's called the branch of the year, the one that will grow in the spring and harden during the summer. That's what we call yearly growth. And you'll need to know how to tell the difference between the growth of the year, the 2-year-old growth, and the 3-year-old growth. It's not complicated to see. Look closely at the branch. It's very regular. Now I'm climbing a plum tree. You can try looking at any branch. You can see that the branch is quite clean, quite clear. There are no scars on the branch, up to the base of the branch, where you can see there are lots of little ones. So I say scars, but they're actually small lateral marks, which are the marks from the bud in which the branch was formed. So in one season, the tree produced this branch here. On other branches there, which remain straight, this way you can see the small branches at the base. Here is clear, you can see the small scars from the bud, and then here again other scars lower down. And so that's how you can count 1-year-old wood, 2-year-old wood, 3-year-old wood. The scars show where the branch's bud was kept during winter, letting you see the yearly cycles. So here at the base of these two new branches you can see the scars from the bud that produced them. Here, this is really the tip of the branches. There are no other scars all the way to the end. So this is this year's wood, and so if we go down along the branch, we'll see the next scars around here. Here is 2-year-old wood, and further down to the trunk is 3-year-old wood. On a branch like this, we can easily count. So 1-year-old wood at the end, 2-year-old wood, 3-year-old wood. So that's going to be interesting to know, to understand, when we want to work on the flowering and fruiting of our plants. For example, blackcurrant and gooseberry bushes, plus peach and apricot trees. They fruit on 1-year-old wood and new growth, while apple and pear trees do so on 2-year-old wood. It's important to know that we'll heavily prune a peach or apricot tree. This encourages many new shoots, which bear more fruit. However, if an apple or pear tree grows many new shoots, it will mainly grow leaves and yield fewer fruits, so it's important to note that. We won't go into detail now, we can discuss it later. This year's shoots reveal the tree's vigor. Young trees are very vigorous and produce many shoots. So the shoots from this year are going to be very, very long. This one here, how long is it? 40 centimeters, but we can have shoots from this year that are much longer. For trees still growing toward maturity, know that it's not possible to... It's best not to rush a tree to bear fruit while it's still growing. A vigorous tree should grow to full size undisturbed, but if a tree is already fruiting, that year's shoots are usually very short. Depending on how we prune it, we can encourage more vigorous shoots or not. So here, for example, we have an adult tree, an apple tree that's 13 years old, because I planted it when my son was born. So it's not very vigorous in terms of vegetation, in terms of growth. However, it's mature, it's at a fruit-bearing age, it's produced apples yearly for a while, and this year's shoots are growing. Maybe just under 10 centimeters, sometimes even less on some of them. So there's very little vegetative vigor, but there's a lot of fruiting vigor. I don't know if that's how you say it. And in comparison here, we have a plum tree, which is in full vigor, in full growth. It hasn't produced any fruit yet, but it might start to do so this year. And so we have a branch. If we look at the bud scars that the branch has made on this one here, the scars are right here. We have a branch here over 1 meter long, very vigorous. And I'll show you a cherry tree here, which is right next to it as well. And so this one here, it's also a cherry tree that's a few years old. It must have been planted 5 or 6 years ago. And so it's still in full vigor. This year's shoots, this year's branches, the one at the top is at least 1 meter long. So you can see where it splits. It splits at the point of this year's growth. There you go. We have shoots nearly 1 meter long, showing full vigor. So here, once again, on the cherry tree, you can count 1-year-old wood up to about here. And so 2-year-old wood. That's up to there, and then 3-year-old wood, etc. So something that's going to be very important to know and understand is to see how the tree will react to pruning. Each branch has lots of small lateral buds and a terminal bud. If we leave this terminal bud, it's the one that determines that the other buds won't grow. Generally, the tree grows vigorously at the tip, while lateral buds stay dormant due to the terminal bud. I like to use the image that each branch is a dictatorship, determined and led by its terminal bud. Who is the dictator deciding others won't grow? So if we cut a branch right in the middle, all of a sudden, we remove the dictator. Even if we remove the terminal bud, all of a sudden there's no more dictator. Since the branch will stay a dictatorship, the remaining lateral buds will compete to take it over. This is what happens. For example, branches grow in all directions. That's a terminal bud that broke off or was pruned, and right away things get a bit chaotic. All branches return, each becoming a new dictatorship controlled by its own terminal bud. That's why it's important to know how a branch will respond to pruning, since the tree's reaction varies depending on where we cut. Sometimes in a rather vigorous way. Before we continue, we'll review the healing process and everything will fall into place after that. We all generally know what a tree is. It produces wood and has tissues in its branches. Inside the trunk, these are dead tissues, so the wood is dead tissue on which the tree builds itself, which creates its skeleton. Another key point is that these highly intelligent beings will do anything to protect their inner skeleton. Which is their support for life. If a virus, bacteria or fungus attacks and weakens the inner wood, the tree could die, so it will always try to prevent this. Protect itself. I've been talking about healing for a while now, but you should know that a plant doesn't actually heal at all. I was going to say not really, but it doesn't heal at all. A tree, on the other hand, compartmentalizes itself when a part is diseased or affected on the wood, the leaves or elsewhere. It will isolate that part and then protect itself. So the whole art of pruning is about understanding how the tree compartmentalizes, so you can support it and help it do so as quickly as possible. So if you look closely at the base of each branch, you can see a kind of small swelling. We call it a collar or healing collar. Since it's this part that when we cut the branch at the level of the collar, this part with the growth of the tree will swell, then slowly close up, to prevent a fungus or a disease from reaching the wood inside, because it's a bit like surgery. And when you prune a branch, you expose these tissues and put them at risk. If a fungal spore or some disease lands on this wood and rots all the wood, then the tree will try to close up as quickly as possible. There's another image I saw somewhere, and someone mentioned the tree looks similar to this, like a submarine. All the tissues are really closed off. On the outside there can't be any opening for water to get into the submarine. And every time we create a door, by cutting a branch, the tree will try to close up as quickly as possible, so there's no risk of disease or fungus getting in. This healing ridge appears on all trees, including this young plum tree. Here, a hazel tree. Also, you can see a branch was pruned earlier, and so the healing callus has already almost completely closed up. Here on the apple tree you can see it very, very clearly, right here. Here a pear tree, the callus is also very clear here, and here a cherry tree, and so on. Well, we could discuss all trees since they all do this. I only showed fruit trees, but this applies to all. And so this is where we're going to connect what we just saw earlier regarding the story of the terminal bud, which leads its little dictatorship, and the healing ridge, if we want to remove a branch without causing reactions behind it with branches growing in all directions. We'll cut just above this ridge to remove both the terminal and all lateral buds. So the reaction we discussed won't happen. And so we're going to cut just above the scar tissue ridge. We're not going to leave any pieces of branches, because if we leave a stub sticking out above the ridge won't be able to close up. We'll have a small stub left for years, increasing the risk of fungus. We also shouldn't cut. If we cut into the scar tissue ridge, it won't grow back to close up and will never heal. And so that's why we often see this phrase, when you cut a branch, you cut the whole branch and nothing but the branch. That means the whole branch. We don't leave a stub sticking out, we really go all the way to the end, but nothing but the branch means we don't cut into the trunk. And a bit of the healing collar, which is not the branch, but really part of the trunk or the base of the branch. This will enable healing, or at least compartmentalization. A quick clarification, this isn't always well understood. When we explain pruning, we say to prune the whole branch, but you don't always need to prune the entire branch. What I mean is, it's good to know how the tree will react, so you know what will happen afterwards. If you want to remove a branch, let's say there's this structure here and I want to remove this, I'll prune it at the end, but that's not always what we want. We might want this branch to split into different main branches if this is my main trunk and I want to have main branches. And if I want to remove the terminal axis, I can cut here telling myself I want my main branches at this height. I cut here, I remove the terminal bud. So obviously there will be a lot of branches that will compete behind, and then I'll keep the nicest ones on these branches. You can also say I have a branch going here and then I want to have a branch going that way, and I'll prune just above it. When you prune, the buds below the cut usually begin to grow. To get a branch there, I'll check where my buds are below. There I have one that's well placed for the branch to grow that way, so I'll cut above it. Sometimes you may need to cut a branch in the middle, so it's important to know how it will react. So when you cut a branch in the middle, always cut just above a bud, not too far or too close, to avoid damaging the healing callus that will form behind the cut. And then make a slant in the opposite direction of the bud. During cultivation, regularly check your trees and monitor pruning year-round. If we remove the dictator, the terminal bud we've chosen will grow, but so will other buds. So during the year, just remove unwanted branches. And if it's not during the year, it can be the following winter. When we do the pruning, we'll remove the branches we don't want. And there you go, I'll take this one. Imagine I pruned here to get this branch, then next year I'll prune unwanted branches. Always above the scar tissue, and keep the branch I originally chose, and then it'll grow just right. So with that, you should already be able to start pruning a few little things. In special cases, like when there's a branch in the way or a broken branch, you want to take graft wood so the tree doesn't react badly. It's very useful if you want to take graft wood from a friend, and after you've pruned, to collect graft wood. I want this branch, so I cut it in the middle. The tree reacts badly and my friend might not like it. So yeah, it's going to be useful. In those cases, there will be other special situations. When we want to do different types of pruning, we'll look at them. First, we'll briefly review some basic tools and their use. So for the tools, there are some really basic ones. For me, there are some that I always carry with me. Namely, the one we use the most is a pruner. There are different types of pruners. I choose the blade pruner with blades that cross each other, instead of the anvil pruner, which crushes branches against an anvil with its blade. These blade pruners cut much cleaner. So these hand pruners will allow you to cut branches up to 2, 1 and 1/8 inches in diameter, depending on the size and strength of your hands and the type of pruner. Long-handled pruners let you cut branches up to 5 cm. I hardly ever use them. I have my pruners, or you'll have them for pruning. Pruning saws are used for larger diameters. Various types exist, but saws that make clean cuts are best. Or for very large diameters, maybe we'll see that later. For the types of pruning, but I don't recommend cutting branches that are too large in diameter. Afterward, it takes a very long time to heal and it puts the tree more at risk. Sometimes there's just no other option. Be careful using a saw or chainsaw. For chainsaws, use chain oil, especially synthetic oil. It's not good for the trees at all. So if you have a chainsaw that you want to use for trimming trees, use vegetable oils instead. Always remember this rule when pruning. Always have well sharpened tools in good condition and clean. When you're pruning your plants or trees, any kind of plant, always use a clean and well disinfected tool. And if you're pruning several trees, if you're harvesting scions, if you're pruning different trees, always disinfect your tools. When you move from one plant to another, from one tree to another, otherwise you risk spreading diseases from one to the other. So really always be very careful about that. A little thing that might seem trivial is the way you hold the pruner and the direction in which you cut. For these pruners with crossing blades, there's the blade and the counter blade underneath, which is a bit thicker. There's something you need to know, is that the counter blade, which the branch will rest on so the blade can cut, will leave a small wound. So if you hold it the wrong way, there will be a wound left, which is the result of the branch pressing against the counter blade. So when you want to cut a branch, you always, am I good here? You always place the blade on the side of the tree. Place the blade on the section to keep and the counter blade on the branch to remove. To cut the branch here, I stand like this. If I want to cut from the other side, I either turn the pruner or walk around to cut it like this. For larger diameters, I'll show you with the pruning saw that you can cut fairly large pieces, though some precautions are still needed. We always cut above the collar, but not directly on it. Make 3 saw cuts. We'll start by making a small notch first, a little higher and underneath. There you go, it doesn't need to be much, just a small notch. It's to prevent the bark from tearing when the branch breaks, and then we'll cut. There, here above, there you go. There you go, just like that. And like that, it avoids that when the branch breaks, it hurts the trunk. And so then after that, we'll just have to cut here. There you go. This way we get a clean cut, allowing the callus to heal here. Now we're going to see what are the good times, the best times to prune a tree, and especially when you shouldn't prune them. So many people believe that the right time, the best time, is not in the winter, even though it's actually a very good time to prune them. It will also be during the full growing season, in the summer, after fruiting. We just try to avoid the periods when the tree is busy with something. So in the spring, as soon as it starts budding, as soon as it starts growing, we avoid it. When it's flowering or fruiting, we also avoid it. After fruiting, it's fine. In autumn, when the tree loses its leaves, you should know that losing its leaves is work for a tree. It's really working hard to shed its leaves properly. So that's not the time to prune it. And then during the winter, while it's dormant, it's also a good time to prune it. In general, we choose winter to prune it because that's when it doesn't have its leaves. That's when we can really see the structure very clearly. So it's easier to know the shape you want to give it, and it's easier to balance it. But remember, it's dormant in winter, so it won't heal as well, and there's a higher risk of disease. If you prune after summer, once fruit production is over and the tree is growing vigorously, it will heal faster and more effectively. However, there are times when pruning should be avoided. It's when it's freezing, that's not very good for the tree. You risk damaging the plant tissues because of the frost. And when it's raining, the fact that it's raining will make the water run down the branch, carrying all the little spores, the little things that might have settled there. There's a much higher risk of disease for the tree. And besides, I don't know anyway, a lot of people like to prune in the rain, so when it rains we stay warm at home and we don't prune at that time. We'll also avoid pruning during periods of drought since the tree will suffer more easily. If we prune when it's in the middle of a drought, so if we have to prune in the middle of summer during the growing season, we'll try to do it after a little rainy period when it's a bit humid. And if you don't have that where you are and you want to prune at that time, maybe plan a few days or even a few weeks ahead. Flood the tree a little to give it a bit of a boost, water it a little. Subtitling. So I'll finish here with a few cuts that for me are mandatory no matter what shape has been decided. Goblet shaped or espaliered trees. When pruning for myself or others, I focus on some basic principles. I don't even ask. I know that those branches, I'm going to prune them. When I first prune at someone's place and they join me, I still do it. Before pruning, I explain why I'd remove a branch, but some things are just required. When you look at a tree, there may be sick, broken, or other types of branches. I can't see well, but branches rubbing against each other in the wind can damage the tree. And so there is a risk of disease getting in, and those branches you definitely have to cut them. So no matter what type of pruning you want to do, when you see diseased branches, injured branches, or branches that cross each other, you prune those branches. Knowing everything we've seen before, if you prune the branch, you cut it all the way at the end, you don't cut it in the middle, so that there aren't shoots going in all directions, you prune above the swelling, all of that, all of that. For example, with this cherry tree, I could have noticed sooner that it's growing inward. Here, a branch is clearly growing back toward the center and crossing another. They're also rubbing against each other in one spot. Well, I could straighten it, and then maybe it would come back that way, but it's been rubbing for a while and there's an injury, so yeah, I'm going to remove this one. And then here's the other side too. You can see that some of them cross over, going on top of each other. Then deciding which one to prune, which one to keep, is not the end of the world if you cut the wrong branch. You may need to fix it later, but don't worry, cutting the wrong one isn't a big mistake. It's case by case. Is it the one you find most interesting or least bothersome? It's your choice. Another kind of pruning that's almost essential for me is when there's a fork, meaning a branch splits. That suddenly splits into two branches. Really symmetrical, with one going off to each side, and so this fork creates a major weakness. Try it if you want. If you have some not too important branches on your trees, as soon as you spread them a little, as soon as you pull a little, on the two branches of the fork, at the point where they join the branch will split. The branch supporting them will split along its length, and that can really seriously injure the tree. So when you see a fork, cut one side so the branch will eventually solidify behind it. Which do you cut? It depends on the context. Keep the option that's best and most interesting to you and remove the other. As it grows, the cut will heal with no risk of weakness. Here's an example of a fork on these dogwoods where you can clearly see two branches growing symmetrically. There's a branch in the middle, but that doesn't matter, it's still a fork. It's a fork, I'll show it to you a bit closer. And so here, if we pull, I already pulled it a bit earlier and then I pulled it again. You can really see how it's split. And if I pull harder than that, it could split much lower, and that could be a problem. Here's another one here. So this one, I haven't touched it before. That's what can happen. So here, same thing. It could go really, really low, so it's really best to avoid it. So what should have been done here? Before it broke, this circle shows I did that. Pick the most beautiful branch. I would keep this one and cut the other above the healing ridge, always. And there you go, and then maybe I'm a bit far here. When the ridge heals, it will close up above this branch. And then in the end, there will only be one trunk left here. And so something else there, that's going to be on more developed trees. This one is a bit young. It's about your structure. When you have a branch that grows back toward the inside of the tree, and if it bears fruit, you always have to imagine. It's young, so it won't bear fruit. Maybe here, but keep in mind that on a large, fairly flexible branch, if it bears fruit, we can say that this happens during the winter. It's upright but sags slightly when it bears fruit. If a branch grows back toward the tree's center, let me help you visualize it. When it bears fruit, it'll lean and may touch other branches, possibly causing damage. You have to picture how the tree might move, possibly with wind or the fruit's weight. And all the branches, as we saw before, all the branches that might cross that have bark-to-bark contact, that will cause an injury to the tree. So it's better to try to avoid that. So I hope all of that was clear enough. From my point of view, it feels very complicated. I don't know if I did a good job in the video. Don't hesitate to use the comments. If there are things that aren't clear, ask me questions. And then either I'll answer them, I'll make some short videos afterwards, or I'll even redo the whole video if it's not clear. Anyway, there you go. And I hope this was useful for you and helped you get started pruning your trees. If you like the video, you can share it with others. Giving a thumbs up is always great for ranking. And if you like what I do and want to help me keep doing it, you can also support me financially. Use the Typee platform via the links in the description and elsewhere. That's it. And just as a reminder, this channel runs thanks to the support of all the Typee backers who have been following me since the beginning, whom I warmly thank at the end of all my videos. So a big thank you to all of you who make it possible for me to do all this. And I'll see you very soon for the next part of this series and for other videos. See you soon. Bye.